Mark Twain once said, "The two most important days of your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why." Most of us don't understand why we are born. Some end up resenting their parents for bringing them into existence and bring that trace of resentment into the entirety of their experience. Many don't understand that there is a deep purpose for our experience simply because societally we were not conditioned to believe that our purpose is something that transcends the world of materialism. Because we're brought up in a matrix structure, most people's minds are infiltrated by ideas that are foreign, but that end up becoming them. Because the identity tends to serve this role of a semi-permeable membrane, many people end up filtering out aspects of their truth and diminishing their essence in light of all that is false that ends up becoming a part of their identity. For example, the expectations that you are raised to believe needs to be a part of your world, whether that involves hyperachievement, having a certain job that is appealing to parents or to society at large, doing something that is inauthentic to you but that is favored or looked highly upon, having a certain relationship which ends up meeting somebody else's needs or expectations of the ideal relationship for you, but that doesn't actually factor in your value system, your deeper sense of alignment, and who you are at your core. When we end up believing that our reality needs to be a simulation created by those that have once inspired us to become the version of ourselves that we need to be, we completely lose the point of existence. Because this model of experience in which our ego is projecting the conditional expectation for who we should become, what we should want to do, doesn't actually bring us any real, genuine feelings coming from the self. What we end up existing in is an illusion of our own mind's creation, wherein our mind is constantly, holographically projecting into the world around us certain false beliefs, false intentions. And if we use those false beliefs and intentions to manifest our reality, we will end up having the things that are not actually true to us. However, sometimes it takes hitting a midlife crisis or a point at which you realize your own misery is insustainable to understand that you are now needing radical transformation. Hitting a point of this drastic sense of despair can be the wake-up call that we need to start making changes. But very often, it's daunting even then when understanding the miserable outcome of false manifestation to make the change to align with authenticity. And this is simply because most of us lose a sense of who we are at our core along this path to materialistic manifestation. When we stop believing that we can be our consistent self and use that sense of our true self in order to manifest what we really need to achieve in life to remain soulful, we end up compromising. We end up experiencing a reality of constant splits. Splits wherein we feel one way, but we act in a different way. Or a split such as you think one thing, but the inner intention doesn't actually align with that thought. What you might end up experiencing is a reality in which what you want to be experiencing or achieving is not something that's actually true to you, but you stop even realizing that, simply because you've disowned your own genuine feeling of alignment. And in this case, it's important to think about, in the grand scheme of things, what this issue is revealing. Because now is a time when so many people are realizing that they can no longer proceed with the inauthentic path. They can no longer embody the inauthentic self, because it's leading to the accumulation of more karma, more difficulty, and more internal pain due to that dichotomy between the ego and the soul. When you're experiencing a reality of such a split, eventually, you're unable to come to terms with why your ego is so fragmented. You might realize that this pain is something you don't want to be experiencing anymore, but you're not sure how to shift gears, how to literally quantum jump into a reality in which you are coherent, in which you are authentic and soulful, because you've been habituated to live in the inauthentic manner. It's important then to start thinking about why initially you chose this inauthentic path. Because it all begins in some early childhood instance when you did not realize that you can choose to adopt your genuine set of beliefs and expectations in a way that contradicts what others want from you. When presented with this choice, most of us by default choose conformity. We choose the path of least pain, which very often entails us giving up how we actually feel, think, or desire to experience reality in order to conform to what someone else wants from us. This can be as simple as choosing to let go of something that you deeply feel to allow a parent to create for you, or giving up some kind of personal value system because you think that that compromise needs to be achieved to sustain a certain relationship, a job, or some kind of achievement in your life which your ego idolizes. Consider a world in which compromise is not actually necessary, because that is the essence of authenticity and integration. If you need to come into a space of non-duality, where you're integrating both the true essence, your true needs, desires, then you're going to be experiencing the impassioned state of choosing to use your ego as a vessel to achieve that which is soulfully aligned with you. I'll repeat this concept. If you're wanting to achieve genuine authenticity, there does not need to be a battle between ego and soul. You need not choose to disengage your sense of identity, your sense of ambition, your connection to the material world, because that is always going to be a factor of play. If we're existing in this 3D landscape of reality, then by very nature, we're going to have an ego driving our existence. That ego is going to have a certain innate need for individuation. We're going to want to use this ego to gain a sense of self, to be seen for who we are, to have a sense of value coming through what we are able to put out as the energetic output of our identity. However, there's different ways for the ego to gain a sense of approval. The ego can either use false facades, different coping mechanisms, attachments, and false needs in order to achieve its sense of wholeness. Meanwhile, that wholeness is really just an illusion of deeper fragmentation, when the ego chooses to completely abolish its connection to the soul. But the ego doesn't need to be in this separate compartment. It can actually experience a reality in which its needs are met by you choosing to see it fully. What often happens when we're not fully seen and acknowledged as a child is we start to differentiate ourselves from our own truth in order to have those needs and conditions met. But in doing so, we're actually giving conditional love to ourself, where the self is just this essential value that we're able to provide through our identification with who we are. This means then that if you're loving yourself conditionally by forcing yourself to do things that are not actually aligned with you because you believe you should be doing those things or you have to be doing those things, you're living through this prism of a distorted egoic bias. That egoic bias is dictating to you that you need to be living life in a certain way to meet a certain condition, which is what's necessary or expected from you in the physical plane. But let's zoom out a little bit on this picture and think very existentially about why this would be the case. Why do people choose to give their entire lifetime sometimes to the inauthentic way? Why would they choose to stay in inauthentic relationships or in jobs that they don't like? Maybe this is something that even resonates with you. Think about all of the elements in your reality which are not true to you, which don't bring you a genuine state of joy. That's maybe harming you, or maybe you're actually abandoning yourself and your genuine feelings to keep yourself in a situation which you think you need to be in. Why would you choose to do this? Well, a simple answer is that maybe you don't actually see that there is another way. The alternative to this compromise of the true sense of self is realizing that it's never too late to self-actualize. This is what Mark Twain is hinting at in that infamous quote, that the day you really realize why you were born is the day that you really start to live. You can start to thrive when you enter a reality in which you realize this is really all about you and your ability to bring meaning into your reality. On an even deeper level, this is the meaning that you choose to give your own consciousness, because everything that's a part of your experience is essentially bringing out your relationship with consciousness. If you're not seeing that you are actually the creator of your experience, then what's going to be entering your experience is a perpetual test of your ability to associate more deeply with the inner state of who you are. Where if you're choosing to actively live in pursuit of deeper peace, deeper joy, balance, alignment, and soulful integration, then what you're going to be looking for and setting as that sole expectation in your reality is more of that same experience of oneness and fully seeing yourself in the world around you. Remember that what you're choosing to entertain as a possibility in your reality is going to be reflecting what you think and deeply believe can be a part of your world. Which means if you're constantly entertaining lesser possibilities, this comes down to how you are choosing to see yourself. If you're constantly unhappy and choosing to be okay with that state of unhappiness, you are dwelling in your own despair. You're choosing to look at yourself as someone who doesn't deserve a deeper experience of fulfillment in life. And the deeper question then is why? Where did this come from that you chose to compromise not just on the ego or the soul's expression of genuine satisfaction, but actually on the state of allowing yourself to be in joy? This frequency of joy is something that you can experience at any time, but you need to be actually allowing yourself to hold this frequency, which means very often the reason why people can't entertain the authentic possibility, the authentic relationship, is because they're not allowing themselves to experience that full capacity of joy. This is a startling truth for many to accept. Because think of it, if you've been living in a certain way that's monotone, that's dull, that doesn't allow you to express the deeper colors and radiance of your spirit, then you've been choosing to dim your own light. You've been choosing to stay in the darkness. There are then aspects of your true self that are hidden away in your shadow and deeply suppressed because you fear coming out of that closet and allowing yourself to be authentic. Maybe there are different experiences which have compounded into a state of perpetual fear. Maybe you think if you choose to come out of this closet, your life is going to drastically change, and the letting go of the ingenuine attachments is what's presenting the deepest sense of fear. But fear not, because the deepest thing that you can experience as despair is when you allow this feeling to build up. See, if you're choosing to ignore the feeling of dissatisfaction for a very long time, you're going to realize eventually that you just can't stay untrue to yourself. And so that's typically when people experience a dark night of the soul moment, when they realize there is no more running away from their sense of self, that at the end of the day, we're all alone with ourselves. We eventually, even when choosing to run away from this feeling of fragmentation, have to come home to the reality of the split, have to face our own souls and realize if we've been packing away our feeling of ignorance towards the self, then that's going to be exposed by more unfortunate events or more feelings that we are actually sabotaging the joy we want to be experiencing in life. At the end of the day, everyone wants to experience joy, love, alignment, contentment. But if the ego is creating such a strategy of rigid focus on what's the inauthentic path, then we just can't achieve it. And in the larger scheme of things, what this is revealing is that we've been living in a largely masculine world. The masculine structure has been such that we've been compartmentalizing ourselves, our beliefs, our thoughts, our intentions, in order to cater to this masculine mold of reality. This is the world in which people chase materialism and in which there is never enough, where we think we always need to be more and do more, almost coming out of our skin in order to experience a sense of grandiosity, in order to compare ourselves to that expectation that is often larger than life. This is the world in which people try to outcompete the illusion, which is never going to allow them to experience joy in the first place. It's the reality in which we always think we need to flaunt an achievement or bring our sense of self into some kind of state of attachment in order to show who we are and that we are enough. But ultimately, the feminine state is what ends up prevailing. The reason why this collapse can happen and why people realize their own narcissism is because eventually that feminine reality prevails. That is the depth of your own feeling. That's the deep dimension of who you are, which is only found in your inner world. And when you come home to that state, that's when all is revealed. That's when that masculine prison of unconsciousness can be disrupted by the feminine's desire to integrate. The masculine is often representative of this egoic state of structure, the box of society, the feeling that you don't really have the permission to think outside the box because that challenges the very nature of reality, that norm, that imprisonment of the mind which makes people choose the same path for potentially their entire lifetime. The feminine state is much more fluid, much more flow-like. It allows the emotions to dominate the experience, which means there is no certain way to be, except choosing to fully entertain the emotional state which allows for deep integration. This will certainly place you in a deeper state of alignment, but in order to get there, you first need to jump over the hurdle, which is your own masculine state. The own masculine within you that might be having you choose a structured path which is inauthentic to you. If this is a battle that needs to be overcome, only the merger of this divine masculine and divine feminine energy within you can start to illuminate the way forward. In many, the wounded feminine doesn't allow for forward-moving action, and the wounded masculine in many also inhibits the ability to live authentically because it's leading to more overstimulation of the being. It's leading to more hyperachievement, to more of a focus on the externality rather than the internal state of affairs. And so to merge the two, it's important to think about how can we think and feel in tandem? How is the external manifestation essentially useless unless the inner manifestation is true in nature? Unless you can actually enjoy the feeling of being alive, choosing to passionately do what you do on a daily basis, there is really no reason to be. What lights us up is a feeling that we can be a continuous vessel of our consciousness, both in our inner world and in the outer experience. That's what brings deep satisfaction in every relationship, in every career choice, in every personal hobby and expression of the self. Now it's our time to choose. Are we being selective with our expression of self? Are we choosing to attach inauthentic filters to this experience? Or are we choosing to guide our own soul into the physical world through love, through unconditional connection, and through an understanding that who we are is really going to lead to our entire life experience? It's time to understand that our dissatisfaction stems from us, from our inability to see ourselves fully and to understand that we are seeking, more often than not, validation from our own spirit to guide us on this path, to refute the materialistic and very matrixy themes of conditionality in order to find our authentic way to be. This is entirely up to us, and many are currently going through this transition. So if these words resonate with you, I want you to consider how you can choose to embody your own spiritual essence, your own deeper desires, your own feelings and beliefs without compromising on any of them and allowing them to naturally pave the path into a future that is most aligned with you. You can be your own creator. You can choose to change the way that you normally run your life by inserting more of these qualities of your truth, and doing so will only allow you to experience deeper joy and harmony with yourself, because all of reality is essentially giving you the space to experiment with your energy, to find your personality on some spectrum of what you're allowing yourself to experience, in which case you may also start to realize that whatever you aren't experiencing is also due to some self-imposed limitation stemming from your mind. Choose coherence. Choose the opportunity to fully bring to life the inner potential by realizing that if you haven't fully chosen to live, it's now better the time than ever to start to ascertain what it is that you experience as the purpose of your experience.